Hi, I'm Bailey Branscombe, and this is my choice book project for Diverse Learners Intersession 2016 TEEL 230. For this project, I chose a book that my sister had mentioned to me. She works at the University of Denver, and she loves reading stuff like this, and so I had just kind of texted her one day and asked what I should read, and she said that she had heard that this was a great book, and she was right, and that she hadn't had a chance to read it yet to sort of tell her what I thought. So it was perfect. Um, it was called "Some of My Best Friends Are Black: The Strange Story of Integration in the United States" by Tanner Colby. This book was nominated for American Library Association's 2013 Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Nonfiction. Um, Tanner Colby also has written um, a New York Times bestseller, The Chris Farley Show, about how everyone knows Chris Farley, but it was about his drug overdose at age 33 and just kind of a biography of his life. So after I found out that, she had mentioned it, which she wouldn't tell me a book to read that wasn't going to be good, and then I also found out that he had written a book about Chris Farley and then an NFL star that were New York Times bestsellers. I decided to give it a shot, and I'm glad I did. It was a great book. I was very pleased with it. Um, his inspiration for writing was that after the Obama was elected for president, he realized that he didn't really truly have any African American friends. He said he saw people at work, he knew people, he had acquaintances, but as far as like someone that you go out and have a drink with or you go over to their house and hang out, he didn't truly have any African American friends. So he started to ask around to his friends, and they would say, "Oh, well, I know this guy at work," or "I went to school with somebody," or such and so on. And so he kind of realized that that needed to change, and he wanted to figure out more about integration in the United States. So his story, this is the cover of his book. This is a picture of him in the bottom left corner that at age 3 you can see as one African American in his class. He lived in Lafayette, Louisiana, it says. And so for his book, he went back for the first section. It's broke up into 4 sections with chapters in each section. He went back to Birmingham, Alabama to look into the busing issues. So he kind of just broke down, in each place he went, he kind of just broke down the history and found what all the issues led to and where they all started. And in Alabama, he found that there were towns that did not want there to be interracial schools at all. They did not want integration. Uh, and these towns were being overcome by African Americans, and they didn't like it. And so he talks to some people and some different families that had to go through that. He gets the chance to talk to the bus driver and all that kind of stuff, and he really learns where integration started and why it was such a big deal there. He said he never really understood it. He understood it, but he had never really paid attention to it. So then he talked about um, all the problems with busing and the places where people lived and parents getting mad and causing uproars and just all the stuff that went along with this that wasn't very positive things. Um, in his second section of his book, he talks about the real estate in Kansas City, Missouri. He talks about how when it was started to be integrated that they were zoning based on races, and basically based on what race you were, you could only live in certain areas, and that there were like mansions right down the street from ghettos because of the different zoning, and they were just 2 different worlds right next to each other. There was a group called the 4963 Neighborhood Coalition, and they were a group of white people who were trying to stabilize the community by zoning everything, and they were having African Americans come to their meeting, and when they were doing that, they were basically in their face just saying, well, you have to live here because of your race. And so that chapter just kind of touched on how the real estate was pretty bad there, and the different ghettos and slums versus the um, mansions and the country clubs that were in Kansas City, Missouri. For his section number 3, he talked about the different racisms in advertising, and this is picture of the Grove orange juice, and one of the commercials that he had quoted in his text said that, "Say it out loud, I'm black and I'm proud, and I buy from Grove fresh orange juice," was the actual line, the slogan of this orange juice. And so in that chapter, he just kind of breaks down how racism played a big part in advertising and stuff in New York and New York City, and that it wasn't always fair, and it didn't always properly identify what was going on. And then in his section number 4, it was kind of about religion and racism. It was about in the Jim Crow laws in Louisiana, but the main thing I pulled from this section was that there were 2 different Catholic parishes that were in, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, Grand Coteau, Louisiana, and one was, of course, for whites and one was for blacks, and how they went against the odds and tried to combine to become a church together. I thought that was really cool. And the last thing I have is there was a quote. Tysley Williams was a girl that her mother was one of the only African American teachers in the Birmingham, Alabama area where she grew up, and in the book it talked about in the first section about how her and her siblings, when they were younger, they were able to go to an all-black school, but as soon as they were in middle school, I believe, their parents made them integrate into the school where they worked with the white kids, and just about that transition. So this is that quote, and it says, "Even on my first day of school, I promised myself that I would be nice to everyone, because there was a fear that people would not be nice to me because of my race. But all of my experience proved otherwise. I had never had to be anything other than who I was. I think I was able to make as many friends as I did because I had a level of sensitivity that most teenagers don't have. And I had that because I was black. There were skaters and jocks, and this group wouldn't talk to that group, but I never felt victim to those classifications because I was so cognizant of being classified myself. I tried to learn everybody's names, be friendly to everybody. I think if I hadn't been black, I wouldn't have been as popular as I was. I would have just done whatever the majority was doing." And I really enjoyed this quote in the book because she was graduated in the class of 1993. But even then, she was one of 2 or 3 at her school that were the African Americans, and it was just not very integrated, and everything's still very separate. And so I thought this quote was awesome because when it's mostly the parents and the adults that have such a problem with the integration, and the kids just see each other as kids and they just want to be friends, and it's like they have to live up to what their parents think. And I just thought this was really cool that she went above and beyond to be nice to everybody, even though she knew that when she went in she was probably going to be judged, and everyone was going to look at her race and not her personality or who she really was. So I thought that quote was really a neat quote. But the importance of this book and how it relates to teachers and what I want to do with my life, I just feel like it's so important to understand the history of integration and stuff, especially when you're at a school that is extremely integrated like that. To understand where those students are coming from, and to pay attention to different racial things that are going on, and make sure that there's not any racial bullying. But I just thought this book, it didn't really have any guidelines for me to follow, I guess, but it really was neat to learn the history on all this different integration stuff that I hadn't really paid attention to before, and how I can use that to my advantage when I become a teacher. So that is my project. Here's my reference for my book. And that is all. Thank you.